Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for joining me today. Now, with this week in Dissidia, we've got three major events to cover. We've got Beatrix's event or the rework of her event, which includes Beatrix's own rework, as well as her EX Plus realization, as well as Steiner's rework and his EX and the realization for that as well. So we're going to cover those, as well as the event itself, and bring some recommended characters along for that. We're also going to be getting later in the week the Phoenix Cave event. So we're going to have a look at how that event works, what makes it a little bit different to anything we've seen before, as well as Selphie's rework and EX Plus, and the banners that will be accompanying it to see whether they're worth your resources. And then finally, we're actually going to be getting Dimension End Entropy 9 as well. So we're going to have a quick look at that, what kind of things you can expect from it, which characters you might want to bring along for that. So, I mean, if all that stuff sounds interesting to you, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we go into the events themselves, I would like to invite you guys to have a look at all of my social media accounts in the description box below, including my Twitter, my Discord, and my Twitch. We've been doing some really cool stuff on Twitch recently. We've been playing War of the Visions, we've been playing lots of Opera Omnia, obviously, but due to everybody requesting it and being very generous towards it, we're actually going to be doing two 12-hour streams over the next couple of weeks. So this Saturday, I'm going to be doing one for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then the following week, the following Saturday, we're going to be doing one for Final Fantasy XIV, so that I can try and get back into that and try and get back up to speed for it, because it's been quite a while since I've played that game. So definitely check out my Twitch channel if you'd like to come and accompany me for those. Let us, of course, not forget Patreon as well. If you would like to investigate how to get yourself one of the bespoke title cards as the ones you can see below, and you'd like to support the channel further, then definitely check out the link to Patreon in the description box below. And of course, with every video, I always give a random shout out to a single patron for every single time to show my appreciation for the support I get from you guys. And this time around, that's going to be Sutibun. So thank you ever so much for your support. You know, you've been extremely kind over these past few weeks, and I'm very, very thankful for it, to anyone who signs up to Patreon as well. And of course, don't forget to check out DissidiaDB.com as well, as it's my general source of information when it comes to giving you guys advice for characters and everything. And of course, all of the other content creators for Opera Omnia are out there for you to check out as well, and I encourage you very heavily to do so. With regards to the actual event itself for Beatrix, the main boss that you'll have to worry about is going to be a pair of Maraliths. So if you played Beatrix when she first came out, you'll know what to expect from this. It's just a lot of high bravery, regular HP attacks, things like that. So fairly standard fare for a chaos fight at this point. The only thing that realistically you have to worry about before we get into sort of party compositions and stuff is the fact that they like to buff themselves like pretty far across the board. But they're non-framed debuffs, so you can push them off quite easily with regular debuffs. Or you could bring a Dispel character along with you, like Vanille is one of the major characters for synergy in this particular fight. Or you could bring Faris, or you could bring Balthea even. There's a lot of things that you can bring along to this fight. Obviously, not including the synergy characters, and that includes Vayne. Aranea is going to make absolute mincemeat of this fight. If you're struggling with this fight, and honestly, I think this is one of the easier Chaos stages that we've had for a while, then honestly you could bring Aranea or Vayne or anyone like that that's just going to do absolute sort of madness to their damage. Ultimecia would also work. Warrior of Light's actually very good for this fight because of the shields he puts up, and they do like to hit pretty hard once they've had their buffs up and everything. You're going to want some level of healing in your party, I think, because the HP attacks are quite regular. So you've got loads of options when it comes to that. You've got Cecil, you've got Penelo, you've got Rosa, you've got loads of different options on that front. Having a tank is also quite handy. You could use, as I said, Warrior of Light or Zac, or even Edge. I actually chose to use Edge in my clear for this fight, and you'll see later on in the week when I do Chaos Roundup how my run for that actually went. Beatrix herself is obviously very great for this event, and we'll have a look at her rework in just a second. But if you've got her, honestly, there's no reason why you should be find this particular fight difficult. If you've got attack downs through sort of Steiner or Vanille or anything like that on top of the defense ups that Beatrix brings along, they're going to be hitting you for practically nothing. Like if you have Steiner or Vanille and Beatrix, they're actually going to be hitting you for zeros or ones for the majority of the fight. The only thing you're going to have to be careful of is when their health gets really low, they like to try and blitz you at the last minute, and if they break you, they will one-shot you. So just be very mindful of that. But honestly, it's not a particularly difficult chaos if you've got characters to carry it. And at this point, you should have a fairly good selection of characters with EXs, people in different roles, things like that. And if you're not in a position where you can do that, there are so many good banners out right now. So if you could go for Beatrix, you could go for Vayne. There's loads of different characters you could bring to this, and we'll have a look through Steiner and Beatrix's kit now, and then we can have a look at why you may or may not want to bring those with you as well. So let's head over to DissidiaDB.com to have a look at Beatrix's rework and her realization. So if you guys were not privy to how Beatrix worked when she first came out, the whole thing with her was that she dealt more damage, she was much better as long as the party hit over a certain threshold of buffs across the whole party. So really you kind of want to try and keep buffs on you as much as possible, and debuffs can actually make her significantly weaker, so do bear that in mind when you take her into a party composition. But looking at the rework itself, Saint Cloth has now got a Brave HP attack attached to it, which it didn't have before, and she now has an HP++, which is significantly stronger than the HP plus she had before. I mean, she was one of the first characters to have a proper HP plus that went with an EX, and it wasn't that great to begin with, but now it at least competes with other characters with their HP pluses. So she's hitting fairly hard without having to use a skill, and that's really useful. And then her Thunder Slash is now a Brave AoE damage. I mean, if you play the JP version, she's actually just had another rework, so now it does splash damage as well, and Beatrix's LD and stuff is really quite tasty, but that's not for this video. But her Thunder Slash, it's just significantly stronger. It's got a nicer amount of Brave Overflow, as long as you've got a certain number of buffs on her. But going into her EX and what we can expect from Save the Queen Plus, basically, as you can see, there's a lot there to take in. But she basically wants to have 12 buffs, so at least sort of 3 to 5 across your entire party to give herself Clim Hazard ++, which then changes Clim Hazard into a dual-hitting Brave AoE, Brave HP attack, and multi-attacks are always very useful. So do take that into account if you want to awaken Beatrix. She actually gets that on her 0 out of 3, so it's nice, but realistically you definitely want to get her to her 3 out of 3, and I'll let you know why in just a moment. But she also gets her stats raised so that she competes with other Chaos characters now. She starts the quest with Defense Up, HP Regen, Noble Loyalty, and Sworn General, which is the buff that she gets from Clim Hazard as well. So she gets all of her buffs pretty much straight off the bat, which is actually very significant because it means that she can start off with her Thunder Slash pluses, her HP++. She actually can go into a fight without having to build up first, so having those buffs is actually really, really important. But when you do her 3 out of 3, she gets lots of damage increases, all that stuff that's very nice. But her HP attack changes after you use Clim Hazard into Holy Knight's Safeguard, which is a Brave HP attack, you know, kind of similar to her normal HP++, but what happens to it is she then gives herself another buff, which is Holy Knight Safeguard. So until her next turn, your party cannot take HP damage, like it just doesn't take it. And this is obviously very useful in her event, but it's actually very useful in other events as well. So if you want a defensive damage dealer, then Beatrix is the way to go. She's very, very good at it. In fact, her defensive sort of increases, all the stuff she gets from her Saint Cloth, it's a noticeable drop in damage that you take after you use it compared to if you didn't have it. That's why I said if you take her and a significant attack damage drop, even Chaos bosses are going to be hitting you for ones. And so if you need defenses, Beatrix is actually very strong. She works very, very well with debuff evasion characters as well, because debuffs take away buffs if they're like pushing some of them off. So if you're looking forward to somebody like Lena or Selphie even, then perhaps Beatrix would be somebody worth looking into. The main problem she has is that because she has so many buffs that come off of all of her stuff, because that's what her entire sort of rotation revolves around, you can't really have anyone else in the party that grants buffs, so for God's sakes don't take Pinello with her. But she works very well with aura-based fighters, so people who, you kind of have to do a bit of math when you're using her so that you can put everyone together and make sure that they add up to the 6 total buffs. I've been enjoying using her with Rosa and Paladin Cecil, and that's probably the team that I plan to take to DE9, so I've purpled Beatrix, because they all balance out very, very well. You can also use her with Edge very well, and I use this for her Chaos fight, because between Edge and Beatrix, it's very rare that you're taking HP damage almost at all, between the evasion buffs from Edge and then the Holy Knight protection from Beatrix, and yet you're still dealing a decent amount of damage with those two as well. So there are really nice ways to use Beatrix, but because of the buff management and because of the use of characters that tend to rinse through turns very quickly, so Pinello or Vayne. Vayne is not a great character to use alongside Beatrix because he goes through all these free turns and all the buffs that he gets from other characters, he's going to rinse through, which means that Beatrix then becomes weaker. So she's a really strong character, but she isn't as mandatory as some players would like you to believe. Now, Steiner, on the other hand, gets quite a significant rework as well, but ultimately, I still am not the biggest fan of Steiner, as much as I love my FF9. And I've been also mildly down-talking Beatrix, despite the fact that she's one of my favourite characters in the entire franchise, which saddens me. But Steiner is basically built to increase max bravery for your party, but isn't very good at raising attack. He has one of the most potent attack down debuffs in the entire game, thanks to his power break attack, and he gets some framed buffs. So the Knight's Oath, as it's written here, but I think it has a different name. I haven't got Steiner, so I couldn't tell you exactly what the name of it is. It's just a pretty generic brave HP attack with the attack down on it, but what Steiner is trying to do is he raises his bravery by a percentage of your party's total bravery before the majority of his attacks. So that's kind of where a lot of his stats come from. He doesn't have pretty much any attack buffs on his stuff whatsoever, but he gets a lot of bravery from his party members. So realistically, if you want to use Steiner, you need to be bringing a good party brave battery along with you. Beatrix isn't bad for it, but there are much better ones, like Ishtola would be a good shout to have alongside him, because she has the defense down from stone, she has the brave batteries from Pulse of Life. She's actually a very strong shout for that. The other thing to bear in mind as well is that Steiner does have a man-eater effect, so anything humanoid he does extra damage to, so he might be somebody to consider for Dimensions End 5 if you haven't cleared it already, or if you perhaps want to free up a couple of characters, because he will deal extra damage to all of them because they're all mannequins. So that's something to bear in mind as well. But his EX is a AoE brave HP attack with 50% splash damage, although it's 100% splash damage, so it's 100% AoE, which is also very nice, based on whether you 3 out of 3 ingot him. It also gives him a frame buff that raises his attack and the party's max bravery again, which is fine, but again, his brave shaving capabilities, due to the fact that he has relatively low attack compared to everybody else, is a little bit of an issue for him. And then, while you've got a 0 out of 3 in terms of ingots, he actually gets a half-decent HP++ and brave attack++, because he does a 3-hit brave HP attack that he raises his bravery based on his party's bravery already. So it does actually hit relatively hard. The HP damage he deals is actually okay because of the fact that he gets so much from his party as long as you've built around Steiner. But his brave shaving is definitely lackluster compared to a lot of other characters. And then if you choose to increase the number of ingots you put into him, then he gets more Brave Overflow. He starts the fight with the Pluto Knights buff, so he starts with that party max Brave buff. And he also, as I said earlier, gets 100% AoE damage on his Stock Break EX attack. His sphere is not bad, it's not great. Beatrix's is also kind of nice, but not mandatory. The thing with these characters is that, and it depresses me to say it because I love Beatrix and she is very good. If you don't already have Beatrix, then I probably wouldn't recommend pulling on this banner yet, because it will still be live when Leo and Galoof's banner comes up. So maybe you could consider waiting on that banner to see what you can get out of that before you then pull on Beatrix. I purpled Beatrix, I went all on her, but she's one of my favourite characters. Being realistic, she is a great character to have, and I'm hoping that she works well in Dimensions End 9. She also works relatively well in Dimensions End 8, and some people I've seen use her in Dimensions End 12 later down the line as well, so she's not completely useless, but she's not an exceptional character for any Dimensions End. I'm hoping to use her so that I don't have to use Vayne in DE9, but that being said, she's not a mandatory character. I like to make people think that she is because she's a favourite. Being realistic, she's just a very nice character to have. So if you don't get her, don't panic. If you get her easily, you've got a good character. Steiner is cute, and I've seen a lot of people say that if they get him, then they're going to just put a book into him, and he's one of the few characters that works well in with just as a book and no ingots at all, because he gets his nice HP++, and he does have that really strong attack down debuff. But I wouldn't invest heavily in Steiner. I think if you get him in the free pool or in a few tickets, then yeah. But I wouldn't invest too many resources into him, because I think, honestly, there's so many good characters coming up in the near future that he is the last character that I would want to be pulling for. So later on in the week, we're going to be getting the Phoenix Cave event and Dimensions End 9. Now with the Phoenix event, it's basically similar to Heretic missions in that you can only use a certain subsection of characters for each fight, but instead of it being a one and done thing, it wants you to use parties of different crystal colours. So be prepared to bring up to 3 of a single colour, a crystal colour, to a particular fight. This is leading up to the Chaos. For the Chaos itself, you don't actually have to do that. You can bring whoever you like, as far as I'm aware. But for example, if you were to bring a red team, you could bring like Beatrix, Kuja, and Vanille, because they all, like, one heals, one's damage, one's debuffs. You know, they all complement each other well. So try and make sure you have a nice range of characters that you have access to. It's not like they're hugely difficult fights that you'll need to do this for, but having a range of characters will help you. The Chaos mission is comprised of 3 waves, which any team could be brought to, as I said, and they will comprise of Renoa's Moths from her event, and then the Dragon from Lena's event, and then the Phoenix itself. Phoenix itself will create an aura in which you're taking HP damage regularly, so having a healer is going to be really useful. But because of the banners that come with this event, I'm actually only going to cover Selphie because she's the only new character, but I'll give my thoughts on the banner itself afterward, or the banners themselves afterwards. But there's so many good usable synergy characters, including Rosa, Noctis, and Selphie, that you could like easily bring up plenty of characters for you. But any strong defensive team will do the trick. So if you've got Zac, if you've got Warrior of Light, if you've got Penelo, you're going to have a lot of characters that you can use for this. I personally plan to use my tried and tested duo of Paladin, Cecil, and Rosa, mainly because I will get my due when it comes to Paladin and Cecil. I invested into him, and I will not I'll make sure that I don't live to regret it. And then I'll probably bring a strong damage dealer along, like maybe Vayne or Beatrix or even Aranea. Although, much as I try to avoid using Aranea, like the plague, because people just think she's auto-win, but then at this point she kind of is. So I'm going to try to use Paladin, Cecil, and Rosa, and then a strong damage dealer. But there are loads of options that you have available to you. If you have some of the synergy characters like Rosa, like Noctis, like Selphie, then this event shouldn't be too much of an issue for you. Now, Selphie is an interesting character, and since her EX came about, she's always been an interesting character. She hasn't been quite so mandatory since her first debut with her 35 CP and the godliness that was Wool. She has a short rework, which actually gives her quite a nice buff to her Crystal 54 passive, as it raises party max bravery and attack while she's buffed, which it should be always. And then her drain is extended so that she can use, she gets bravery gen and stronger recoveries from it. Her wall is reworked slightly as well, making the wall itself slightly stronger, but it also improves her max bravery, which she desperately needs, because I used her in co-ops. Like, we've been doing themed co-ops on Twitch, and I took Selphie to an FF8 against Cosmos Cerberus, and oh god, it took forever, just based on how little damage she does. And unfortunately, that doesn't really change with either her awakening, her rework, sorry, and her EX awakening as well, because she doesn't Brave Shave like at all. But she gets slightly more damage out of her 3 out of 3 because her HP++ actually becomes half decent. But Aura is such a cool and good mechanic that to make her too powerful in and of herself would break her. She's very similar to Rem in that respect. Rem and Selphie are both characters that you bring along to kind of serve as like character 2.5 as opposed to a third character. They're there to provide the buffs, they're there to provide kind of the support, but they're realistically there to just make the other 2 characters stronger. With Selphie, it's through Aura and them having faster EX recharge, and through Rem, it's through having swap turns, and Siphon Delta just to use swap turns more. But with Selphie, she's like, with both of them, their actual ability to deal damage to the opponent is very weak, but her aura does give Brave Battery. It starts to heal once you put some ingots into her. It's got a bit of Brave Overflow on it. It's starting the fight with aura as well after you put a single ingot into it, and you know, raising her attack, which is realistically not a particularly important stat for her. She needed more max bravery, which she does get some of, but not quite enough. She's just a very cool character. She's one that I have her EX, and I'm very pleased that I have it, but I don't think I'm going to be putting any books or any ingots into Selphie purely based on the fact that she's actually not that strong past the gimmick of Aura. she's usable in numerous DEs, but they're usually earlier ones. And I actually have already used Selphie with her base kit in DE5, which is probably the strongest place to put her. So 4, 5, and 6 are the most common ones that people use her on. And she's cool, but she's in no way necessary. So I wouldn't go out of my way to grab Selphie from this banner. I mean, provided the banner doesn't change, we were actually supposed to get Noctis's EX realization on this banner as well, but obviously we got it early because we got it with Aranea instead, where JP didn't get it until now. So that's why we won't be covering Noctis on this one, because we already know what comes with Noctis. But Selphie is a character that I think is novel, and I think if you awaken her and you put all your resources into her, she is going to serve you well. She is a good character. But it's the same issue when it comes to Steiner and even Beatrix to some extent. There are so many strong characters coming up in the next few months that you have to be really careful where you put your ingots from now on. I mean, I was cavalier in putting them into Cecil, and I kind of regret putting them into Lael at this point, even though he's a very good character. So just bear that in mind when it comes to Selphie. She is good, just be careful with your resources. And finally this week, speaking of draining resources, we've got Dimension's End Tier 9. And honestly, the reason I mentioned draining resources is because thank God we have a DE coming up this week, because we're going to need all the ingots that we can get. Because, like I said, we've got so many strong characters coming up over the next few months that we need every single book, every single ingot that the game can throw at us right now, and it's mad. So having a DE is really good, and I really enjoy it because it's the hardest content that we have currently. It's really something to get your teeth sunk into. You build your best teams and you just go for it. With this particular tier, you can expect to see frequent HP attacks, so bringing a healer is going to be very, very important. So you've got like Rosa or Cecil or Penelo. There's loads of ways of regenerating HP, Beatrix even. So you want to bring somebody that can do that, and the enemies also have an immunity to defense down, as was advertised in the in-game notices we got instead of the community stream last week. But what that means is that you need to think of creative ways of dealing more damage than just defense down, because the enemies don't take a huge amount of damage without any means of dealing more. But the kind of ways you can do that, you have the obvious, just increase your attack higher. So you've got high aura based characters, so Vayne or Rosa, characters like that are going to be really good for that. You've got Imperil Enchant, so if you haven't used Onion Knight or Cecil, you've got loads of options to do that. So that's one way of dealing more damage without actually decreasing their defense. Vital Crusher will be really good for this. To be honest, Aranea is probably the best character to use in this particular tier because of Vital Crusher and the fact that her damage output is just that damn high. In the JP version, most people used Vayne, and Vayne was a very, very strong character for this event because of his attack aura and the rebreak and things like that. They never had access to Aranea, so that opens up a whole new can of worms for us. So I've actually used Aranea already, so I will probably use a different team for that. But you could also use launches, so if you've got Lael or anything like that, then you could use Lael to do extra damage. Basically, you just want to think of creative ways of dealing extra damage without actually having to rely on lowering your opponent's defenses. One character I thought was very interesting for our version of this is Fran. Now, Fran was not hugely used in by the JP community, but we have a better reason to use her, or more specifically, her ranged Imperil, and that reason is Aranea. So you've got a perfect combination of ranged Imperil down and Vital Crusher, where your damage is going to be absolutely gargantuan just by having those two members in your party. So perhaps Fran might be slightly more valuable to us than she would have been in JP just by having great synergy with Aranea. So that's something that you can consider. There's a lot of characters that you can use in this particular fight, in this particular quest, because there's a lot of characters that do those things. So I personally, again, plan to use Paladin Cecil and Rosa, because I think that duo just does so well, and it doesn't actually impede on your third party member because it's completely aura based. All of Cecil's buffs come from him and not through buffs that he presents to the party, and Rosa's Prayer is still a ridiculous buff. And I chose not to use Rosa earlier because, as I said for the last couple of weeks, I've been planning to use my power couple in Cecil and Rosa for a very long time, so I'm going to make the damn use of them that I can here. And then for the third character, I considered Vayne, but Vayne's actually very good in DE10 as well, so I'm probably going to try and see if Beatrix works with those two, and I'm hoping that will work well. But you've also got, you know, Prunello, Fran, Papalimo would work very well because he has Imperil and consistent levels of damage. Like I said, Lael. But honestly, I can't see a better character or a better tier to use Aranea on than this one. I think her damage is so powerful that you'll just get so much out of her for it. So with regards to the banners this week, you've got Beatrix's Lost Chapter, which has Beatrix EX, Steiner EX, and Vanille as an extra. And then you have 2 banners coming up, provided they don't change, with the Phoenix Cave event, which will have Selphie, Lys, and Noctis as one of the banners, and then Barret, Rosa, and Agrias as the other. Do I think any of these banners are worth pulling on? With regards to the Selphie banner, or the Phoenix banners, probably not. Like, Selphie is cool, Noctis is kind of cool, Lys is pretty lackluster at this point, Rosa's still very good, Agrias is pretty good still, and Barret is still kind of underwhelming. So if you're lacking in resources, we do actually have a free pull with each of these banners. But the only character, personally, that I don't have on this banner, on these banners is Barret, so I obviously won't be pulling on them. But if you don't have Rosa, then you could consider throwing a few tickets at this event. And then with Beatrix as well, like, Beatrix is really strong. Steiner is, he's okay. He's kind of cool. He's one of the weaker EXs out there, in my opinion. You could throw tickets at this event. And it pains me to say it, because Beatrix is really good. And again, she's one of my favourite characters ever. But the number of really strong banners that we've got coming up over the next few months, you need to find some breathing space to be saving, and now is probably that time. We have Leo and Galoof coming out next week. They're both very strong. Like, Leo is a must-have. We've just had Vayne. He was a must-have. Not even mentioning that we're going to be getting Hope and Lightning soon, who are also must-haves. And then every other banner after that, it's like a landslide of busted character, busted character, busted character, busted character. So we've got to find times in which it's like a struggle, and times I don't want to sit there and say don't pull, because there are characters that are amazing and really cool, like Beatrix, like Selphie. But now is probably the best time for you to be saving. So would I personally pull on these banners? I'd maybe throw tickets at Beatrix, and then that'd be it. But that's the maybe I'm too much of a hoarder. Sound off in the comments below if you think that I'm hoarding too much, or if I'm trying too hard to be frugal with these things. But I just don't want to get to the next couple of months, or worse, the Eldian Burst era, and people sit there and go, oh, I can't keep up with the resources, because I've tried to warn people to save where possible, and hopefully that information has gone in where I hope it does. So that's it for this week in Dissidia. There's actually a lot coming this week all at once, so forgive me if this video is a little on the long side. But thank you very much for listening and for joining me today. I hope that this has presented some interesting answers for you, whether you should pull on various banners, which ones you think worthwhile to you, which ones you think may not be, and of course information on the events themselves and which characters you may want to bring along to those events. As I said earlier, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Discord and Twitch. And of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel and click that bell for notifications. So thank you once again for joining me, and hopefully I will see you later in the week for Chaos Roundup. And thanks again. I'll speak to you soon. Bye!